Hi everybody, I'm going to continue to read Charlotte's Web, and starting with chapter 11, it's called The Miracle. The next day was foggy. Everything on the farm was dripping wet. The grass looked like a magic carpet. The asparagus patch looked like a silver forest. On foggy mornings, Charlotte's Web was truly a thing of beauty. This morning, each thin strand was decorated with dozens of tiny beads of water. The web glistened in the light and made a pattern of lovely lines and mystery. Even Lurvy, who wasn't particularly interested in beauty, noticed the web when he came to feed the pig his breakfast. He noted how clearly it showed up, and he noted how big and carefully built it was. And then he took another look, and he saw something that made him put his pail down. There, in the center of the web, neatly woven in block letters, there was a message, and it said, "Some pig." Lurvy felt weak. He brushed his hand across his eyes, and he stared harder at Charlotte's Web. "I'm seeing things," he whispered. He dropped to his knees and uttered a short prayer. Then, forgetting all about Wilbur's breakfast, he walked back to the house and called Mr. Zuckerman. He said, "I think you'd better come down to the pig pen." "What's the trouble?" asked Mr. Zuckerman. "Anything wrong with a pig?" Not exactly," said Lurvy. "Come and see for yourself." The two men walked slowly down to Wilbur's yard. Lurvy pointed to the spider's web. "Do you see what I see?" he asked. Zuckerman stared at the writing on the web. Then he murmured the words, "Some pig." Then he looked at Lurvy. Then they both began to tremble. Charlotte, sleepy after her night's excursions, smiled as she watched. Wilbur came and stood directly under the pig. "Some pig," said Lurvy. "Some pig," whispered Zuckerman. They stared and stared for a long time at Wilbur. Then they stared at Charlotte. "You don't suppose that spider..." Zuckerman shook his head and didn't even finish his sentence. Instead, he walked back up to the house and spoke to his wife. He said, "Edith, something has happened." He went into the living room and sat down, and Mrs. Zuckerman followed. "I've got to tell you something, Edith," he said. "You better sit down." Mrs. Zuckerman sank into a chair. She looked pale and frightened. "Edith," he again said, "I think you had best be told that we have a very, very unusual pig." A look of complete bewilderment came over Mrs. Zuckerman's face. "Homer Zuckerman, what in the world are you talking about?" "This is a very serious thing, Edith," he said. "Our pig is completely out of the ordinary." "What's unusual about the pig?" she asked. "Well, I don't really know yet," he said, "but we have received a sign, Edith, a mysterious sign. A miracle has happened on this farm. There's a large spider in the doorway of the barn cellar right over the pig pen, and when Lurvy went to feed the pig this morning, he noticed the spider's web because it was foggy. And you know how a spider's web looks when it's foggy? And right in the middle of the web, there were the words, 'Some pig.' The words were woven right into the web. They were actually part of the web, Edith. I know because I have been down there and I saw him. It says, 'Some pig,' just as clear can be." There can be no mistake about it. A miracle has happened, and a sign has occurred here on earth, right here on our farm. And we have no ordinary pig." "Well," said Mrs. Zuckerman, "it seems to me you're a little off. It seems to me that we have no ordinary spider." "Oh no," said Zuckerman. "It's the pig that's unusual. It says so right there in the middle of the web." "Maybe so," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "Just the same, I intend to have a look myself." "It's just a common gray spider," said Mr. Zuckerman. Mrs. Zuckerman said, "I'm going to have a look at that spider." They got up and together they walked down to Wilbur's yard. "You see, Edith? It's just a common gray spider." Wilbur was pleased to receive so much attention. Wilbur was still standing there, and Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman, all three of them, stood there for over an hour. They were looking at the words on the web over and over again and continued to just stare at Wilbur. Charlotte was delighted with the way her trick was working. She sat without moving a muscle and listened to the conversation of the people. When a small fly got stuck in her web just beyond the word pig, Charlotte dropped quickly down, rolled the fly up, and carried it out of the way. After a while, the fog lifted, the web dried off, and the words didn't show up as plainly. The Zuckermans and Lurvy walked back to the house. Just before they left the pig pen, Mr. Zuckerman took one more look at Wilbur. "You know," he said, "I've always thought along the lines that that pig of ours was an extra good one. He is a solid pig. That pig is as solid as they come. You notice how solid he is around the shoulders, Lurvy?" Sure I do," said Lurvy. "I've always noticed that pig. He is quite a pig." "He's long and he's smooth," said Zuckerman. "That's right," agreed Lurvy. "He's as smooth as they come. He is some pig." When Mr. Zuckerman got back to the house, he took off his work clothes and put on his best suit. Then he got into his car and drove over to the minister's house. He stayed for an hour and explained to the minister that a miracle had happened on his farm. "So far," said Zuckerman, "only 4 people on earth know about this miracle. Myself, my wife Edith, Lurvy, my hired man, and now you." "Don't tell anybody else," said the minister. "We don't know what it means yet, but perhaps if I give it some thought, I can explain it in my sermon next Sunday. There can be no doubt that you have an unusual pig. I intend to speak about it in my sermon and point out the fact to this community has been visited by a wondrous animal. By the way, does the pig have a name?" Mr. Zuckerman said, "Why, yes. My little niece calls him Wilbur. She raised the pig on a bottle, and I bought him from her when he was only about a month old." He shook hands with the minister, and then he left. Secrets are hard to keep. Long before Sunday came, the news spread all over the county. Everybody knew that a sign had appeared in a spider's web on the Zuckermans' farm. Everybody knew that the Zuckermans had a wondrous pig. People came from miles around to look at Wilbur and to read the words on Charlotte's web. The Zuckermans' driveway was full of cars and trucks from morning till night. The news of the wonderful pig spread clear up into the hills, and farmers came rattling down in their buggies to stand for hours and hours and looking and admiring Wilbur. All said they had never seen a pig before like this in their lives. When Fern told her mother that Avery had tried to hit the Zuckerman spider with a stick, Mrs. Arable was so shocked that she sent Avery to bed without any supper. That was his punishment. In the days that followed, Mr. Zuckerman was so busy entertaining visitors that he neglected his farm work. He wore his good clothes all the time now. He got right into them when he got up in the morning. Mrs. Zuckerman prepared special meals for Wilbur. Lurvy shaved and got a haircut. And his principal farm duty now was to feed the pig while people looked on. Mr. Zuckerman ordered Lurvy to increase Wilbur's feedings from 3 meals a day to 4 meals a day. The Zuckermans were so busy with all of the visitors, they forgot about other things on the farm. The blackberries got ripe, and Mrs. Zuckerman forgot to put up any blackberry jam. The corn needed hoeing, and Lurvy didn't find time to do it. On Sunday, the church was full. The minister explained the miracle. He said that the words on the spider's web proved that human beings must always be on the watch for comings of wonders. All in all, the Zuckerman's pig pen was the center of attraction. Fern was happy, for she felt that Charlotte's trick was working and that Wilbur's life would be saved. But she found that the barn was not nearly as pleasant. There were just too many people. She liked it better when she could be all alone with her friends, the animals. And that's the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12 is called A Meeting. One evening, a few days after the writing had appeared in Charlotte's web, the spider called a meeting of all the animals in the barn cellar. "I shall begin by calling the roll," she said. "Wilbur?" "Here," said the pig. "Gander?" "Here, here, here," said the gander. "You sound like 3 ganders," said Charlotte. "Why do you have to always repeat everything?" "It's my idiosyncrasy," said the gander. "Goose?" said Charlotte. "Here, here, here," said the goose. Charlotte glared at her. "Goslings, 1 through 7? Bee, 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 bee," said the goslings. "This is getting to be quite a meeting," said Charlotte. "Anybody would think that we have 3 gander, 3 geese, and 21 goslings." Then Charlotte continued. "Sheep?" "He-ah," answered the sheep all together. "Lambs?" "He-ah," answered the lambs all together. "Templeton?" No answer. "Templeton?" No answer. "Well, we are all here except the rat," said Charlotte. "I guess we can proceed without him. Now, all of you must have noticed what's been going on around here these past few days. The message I wrote in my web praising Wilbur has been received. The Zuckermans have been falling for it, and so has everybody else. Zuckerman thinks Wilbur is an unusual pig, and therefore he won't want to kill him and eat him. I dare say my trick will work and Wilbur's life can be saved." "Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!" cried all the animals. "Thank you very much," said Charlotte. "Now, I called this meeting in order to get suggestions. I need new ideas for the web. People are already getting sick of reading the words "some pig." If anybody can think of another message or remark, I'll be glad to weave it into the web. Anybody have any ideas for a new slogan? One of the lambs said, "How about Pig supreme. No good, said Charlotte. It sounds like a dessert. How about terrific, 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 said the goose. Cut that down to one terrific, and it will do very nicely, said Charlotte. I think terrific would impress the Zuckermans. But Charlotte, said Wilbur, I'm not terrific. That doesn't make a particle of difference, replied Charlotte. Not a particle. People believe almost anything they see in print. Does anybody here know how to spell terrific? I think, said the gander, it's T-double-E-double-R-double-I-double-F-double-I-double-C-C-C-C. What kind of an acrobat do you think I am? Said Charlotte. Sorry, 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 said the gander. Then the oldest sheep spoke up. I agree that there should be something new written in the web if Wilbur's life is to be saved. And if Charlotte needs help in finding words, I think she can get that help from our friend Templeton. The rat visits the dump regularly and has access to old magazines. He can tear out bits of papers and bring them up here to the barn cellar so that Charlotte can have something to copy. Good idea, said Charlotte. But I'm not sure Templeton will be willing to help. You know how he is, always looking out for himself, never thinking of anybody else. I bet I can get him to help, said the old sheep. I will appeal to his instincts. Okay, shh, here he comes now. Everybody, keep quiet while I put this up to him. Just listen. The rat entered the barn the way he always did, creeping along close to the wall. What's up? He said as he looked at all the animals. We're holding a directors' meeting, replied the old sheep. Well, break it up, said Templeton. Meetings bore me. And the rat began to climb a rope. Look, said the old sheep, next time you go to the dump, Templeton, can you bring back a clipping from a magazine? Charlotte needs new ideas so she can write the message in her web and save Wilbur's life. Let him die, said the rat. I should worry. You'll worry all right when next winter comes, said the old sheep. Next January, when Wilbur is dead and nobody comes down here with a nice pail of warm slops to pour into the trough. Wilbur's leftover food is your chief source of supply, Templeton. You know that. Wilbur's food is your food. Therefore, Wilbur's destiny and your destiny are closely linked. If Wilbur is killed and his trough stands empty day after day, you'll grow so thin we can look right through your stomach. You don't want to grow too thin now, do you? Templeton's whiskers quivered. Maybe you're right, he said. I'm making a trip over to the dump tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring back a magazine clipping if I can find one. Thanks, said Charlotte. And now everybody, the meeting is adjourned. I have a busy evening ahead of me. I've got to tear my web apart and now spell the word terrific. Wilbur blushed. But I'm not terrific, Charlotte. I'm just about average for a pig. She replied very sweetly. You're terrific as far as I'm concerned, Wilbur, and that's what counts. You're my best friend, and I think you're sensational. Now stop arguing and go get some sleep. And that's the end of chapter 12.